Welcome to Focus, Faith, and Fueling, the Winning Edge podcast, where young athletes, parents, and coaches learn how mindset, nutrition, and faith work together to elevate performance, resilience, and overall health.
What you eat and how you think can elevate and transform your game. If you're ready to gain a true mental edge, fuel your body with purpose, and stay grounded in what truly matters, then this podcast is for you.
We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, author, coach, and educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom to 2 young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, sports dietitian, author, speaker, and nutritional consultant for over 19 years, and a mom of 2 teen athletes.
Today's guest brings elite level experience, passion, and a deep commitment to athlete development. Bianca Cruz has spent over 20 years in the game of softball, with more than a decade specializing in pitching and 10 years dedicated to coaching and mentoring athletes. Her journey spans every level of the sport, from competitive travel ball to collegiate softball at Florida State University and onto the international stage representing the Puerto Rico national team. She also competed professionally in Puerto Rico, giving her a truly global perspective on the game. Beyond her playing career, Bianca works with athletes from elementary age to high school age, helping them develop not just their pitching mechanics and throwing techniques, but also the mental toughness required to compete at a high level. Her mission is simple and driven by her passion to keep growing the game, elevate the athletes she coaches, and continue evolving both as a player of the game and as a leader within it. Bianca, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Always. It's a pleasure coming in.
So we had been playing meeting up tag for this podcast because your schedule is so busy in the most amazing way possible. But can you bring our listeners up to speed just on, what the past few months have been like for you?
Yeah. So I had just finished season up maybe 3 weeks ago. So my season in PR starts around late May, towards the end of school year mostly. And then I'm back and forth between Puerto Rico and some other events within the PSL that I was joining in this last summer. And so just all those planes and travel times and driving. So it made it very tough to actually sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it was great. It had a great summer, all general, just the growth of softball in general. I think I had an awesome time connecting and networking with athletes from the game, both internationally and domestically here in the States.
That's outstanding. Share with us a little bit about what your summers are like playing in Puerto Rico, because this isn't the first summer you've done that. You've been doing this for a long time. So for our listeners that don't know what that's like, can you give us some perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Puerto Rico is not the only country that also has their own domestic professional league. You think about how Japan, Italy, the Netherlands, Australia, they all have their own professional domestic leagues within their country, just like we have here in the States, the AUSL, especially a large one at that. Mm-hmm. But in Puerto Rico, they have the same thing within women's fast pitch. They have a league where each town has a team that represents them and you play each other, right? And you play each other into a championship round where then you compete who's the best on the island. Because Puerto Rico is a small island.
Right.
But it was reached out to me since my connections with playing in PR and I am Puerto Rican ethnicity that I was able to connect and talk to coaches and then get into teams and be able to navigate that. And I just finished my 5th season with them in PR.
Yeah. That's outstanding. I was watching some of the posts that you had made. I was like, this is so exciting, just to keep playing the game that you love professionally and to have that, not be something that ends after college, which for a lot of, college athletes, that's where the journey does end. So I think it's outstanding. Let's talk a little bit about this new opportunity to play at the professional level here in the States. What does that mean to you personally?
I think it's awesome. I truly think that when I was younger, the only options were the Olympics, being on an Olympic team. But even with the Olympics, it's only every 4 years. And then depending on which host country, not every country had a softball team or even baseball. So It wasn't a lot past college. There wasn't a lot of something to do in that professional time post-college. But now with the development of AUSL and now this past summer, the first year for professional softball league, the PSL, it has grown tremendously. And the PSL still has much planned for next summer in 2027, where they have a PSLD, which is a development similar to the same makeup of the major leagues where they have minor leagues. So the PSLD will now be a minor league to the main PSL stage at the pro level. And a lot of it's going to be those college athletes who just finished up playing their last year in their respective school. And now they could continue playing and get called up in that same way of being agency and things like that. So I think to see the growth of that game compared to when it started in the early 2000s, then, think about the 2010s and then all the way throughout, it has grown and it's going to keep growing as we move forward.
I think it's such an exciting time for younger athletes too that play softball to know that there's so much more that can come for them, so much more opportunity. There's so much talent. There's so much athleticism. These girls are amazing. So now knowing that there's opportunities that lie beyond college for them is very exciting. Like, did you know you wanted to go play professional softball out of the country, or were you thinking like, I want to get into college and then from there, maybe it's done? What were your thoughts when you were growing up?
I think when I was younger at the time, I think because I remember I started taking it seriously, especially in the transition into travel ball when I was around 11 or 12. Kind of my first travel ball experience was a 12U travel team. And then the TV media coverage started coming out about like the College World Series and teams of that sort. That was very new. And the coverage of that media was only of the College World Series. I don't think there was a lot of like games of just regular season games of college softball on TV. But once the College World Series started coming out, that piqued my interest. So I knew then around 12, I was like, I want to play college ball. I want to play big Division I college ball. I don't think until I got to high school that the path started transitioning to, okay, what's after college? So even if I get into college and play college softball, what's after that? Because I love this game enough, I don't want to just have to step away because there's nothing to continue. And then I started looking at internationally, the Olympics. I'm like, that's the only thing that goes outside of college softball. That's the only thing that was posted. And it wasn't until I got into college and maybe my freshman, sophomore year that the development of potential pro leagues was starting to grow, where you heard like rumors about the AUSL growing in the early stages. So it was a slow process. I think initially when I was a freshman in high school, I just want to be like, you know what? I want to play college softball. I'm going to try for the Olympics, but it's hard to get into because there's only so much and it's every 4 years. So then what do we do in between those years?
Yeah.
So I think it was like, okay, at least I know I want to go play college softball regardless. It wasn't until late into high school that I was like, okay, now let me see if I can start doing something post-college too. What can there be outside of that?
Yeah, I remember I had that same kind of thought process when I was in upper middle school and then going into high school and realized my goal is college. But I think the TV coverage has been a game changer. I mean, the women's softball World Series for college is phenomenal. I mean, there's grown men that are cheering. I mean, everybody gets into it. And so that for me is so exciting to see, just being a female athlete and loving sports in general. Like, yes, because like you've said, there are other countries around the world that do put more emphasis on the women's sports. So I think it's really exciting to see that transition and the growth happen here in America. How does it feel to be a part of a time where professional softball is gaining that legitimacy and the visibility? How does that feel for you?
I think for me, it's more a humbling and I feel honored for it because now my generation is building the foundation, okay, of those young athletes. So, when I coach my 11-year-olds, my 12-year-olds, you're like, oh, I want to play for the AUSL. That was never a thought for me when I was their age. I just thought, okay, I want to play college ball. For them, they're starting to now look beyond that. Now they can say, oh, okay, I want to play AUSL softball, or I want to play in the PSL softball. So to build that foundation and grow that network of potential for more teams, more organizations. I mean, you think about how the AUSL is and the PSL, to think the potential it can become like the MLB, where, each state has a team, and then depending on how popularity that state is, which most of the time a lot of softball is played in the South, that each we can have now per town. So you think about now, like here in Florida, you got like Miami. Maybe we have a Miami team, an Orlando team, a Jacksonville team, and then you got one in Tampa. So like those large cities, I think the growth of that to be a part of it is so like such an honor as well as like a humbling experience to be a part of that foundation to build and grow the game so that the dreams of these young girls can be like, I can keep going past this college.
So with that thought, how could this impact participation and the development and exposure for younger girls playing softball?
I mean, you can see it now, like the growth of it in general amongst the young ages is starting to expand, right? Starting to expand, especially think about like the Little League World Series.
Yes.
Right now, like that's even gaining media coverage. And now, so you have young athletes. Oh, I want to play Little League. I want to play Little League because if we go a certain distance, I could be on TV too. And I know the AUSL did a collaboration with the Little League World Series for softball. And then they get to be like, oh, I get to also meet the pro level softball players at that stage. So I think the expansion of it is tremendous. And sports in general is such a beautiful opportunity to gain like memories, new places, friendships, character development that you can take beyond into your adulthood, through your adolescence, through adulthood, and memories that you keep forever, you know, regardless whether you pursue college ball or pro ball after that. I think the growth of that game is very much there. The amount of girls I'll get, beginner levels, that just like, oh, well, I had a friend who plays it. I wanted to play it. Or I saw it on TV and my dad does baseball, or my dad likes watching baseball and football. And then I saw softball for girls. Oh, I want to play. So now they see young women being someone they can look up to. And that's such big for just youth in general.
I was going to ask you too, just, you know, the power for young girls playing sports and for young women playing sports, the power that comes with that for social emotional development and character development, just all of the things, self-confidence, right? Like we know as being former female athletes and current female athletes what it does for us. But I think there's something so important in girls having that opportunity when they're younger. And so how do you think we can support more girls getting into sports in general? Just how do you think we can navigate that? Because there are a lot of girls that don't play sports. Sometimes it's financial reasons, but you know, how can we kind of, as a society, help more girls get into the sports world?
Well, I think like the media coverage in itself is definitely expanding. I think also just having, because all the kids are on social media, you know, the TikTok, Instagram, whatever it may be, a lot of kids are on social media. So we have those content creators who are softball players. Now you put a limelight to what it is to be in sports. I think and there is a separation between how we encourage girls versus boys. So being able to influence those girls to be, hey, sports doesn't have to be so hardcore.
Right.
You know, like you think about how the different personalities of girls that come through the sport, you have girls all for tough, and then you're girls for like, you know, I enjoy the softer things in life. There's nothing wrong with doing both, right? And I like to point out like Edenfield, right, from Florida State, the makeup, you know, ASL collaborating with Sephora.
Yes.
Like now you encourage girls like, oh, I can still be pretty and feminine and soft and still enjoy a sport without having to feel like, oh, I'm so hardcore, right? There's nothing wrong with being both. And I think that encouragement is there to be like, okay, I can actually still be pretty. I can still do my hair. I can still have fun in the game while performing at an ability and pushing myself to the limit to create discipline, to create networking, to be able to put myself and have perseverance in a sport that I enjoy.
I really respect that answer and agree completely. So thank you. I want to talk about the young Bianca. What was your experience like as that little girl who fell in love with softball? Who were your biggest supporters and what did that mean for you when you were little?
For me, like I think my dad was definitely there for me. My mom was not a sportswoman. She's all about fitness, but she wasn't really into sports when she was younger. She did a little bit of track and field, but I think my dad, being a baseball guy that he definitely got me into the sport. And I think the passion of it grew once I kind of got into like 10U ball, when kid pitch started coming out. And I was like, you know what? I really wanted to do this. I really wanted to be a part of this. And the memories I made Like, I just enjoyed the friendships I had. You think about when you start getting into travel ball, the hotel stays,
Yeah.
we're all running up and down the hallways, up and down the hallways,
Yep.
playing manhunt, or we playing a hide and seek, whatever it may be. Those experiences were such what I enjoyed. And then team dinners, fundraising events between car washes, being in front of Publix, those type of things. For me, that's what I enjoyed the most. I love the game. I love the game. I love being a part of it. I learned learning about the game. But I think the friendships I've made throughout that, and being able to create memories, having sleepovers because so-and-so is going to take me to this tournament. I'm going to go spend and hang out with her. Well, we got practice. Oh, can I hang out with so-and-so after practice? And you look at some athletes and some of the best friends, like, come from sports. Like, okay, we're still together, even though maybe one of us stepped away from the game or both of us stepped away from the game. We're still friends, We're inviting each other's weddings. Like, so I think it's very exciting the long relationships they build and the memories they create. For me, that's what I enjoy. Like, I still have friends I played softball with. I mean, one of them is doing production in New York City, and, we still talk. And I have one girl who's, still finishing up her last year and before she goes off to grad school. And we keep those connections and memories that we built when we were kids.
It's so important. It's so important. And it's such a powerful experience, I think, to have those relationships and those dynamics with people that you grew up together doing something that you loved, that you enjoyed doing. It's just such an amazing experience. As a coach now, looking back, were there any coaches or experiences that you had with coaches that influenced who you are as a coach today?
I think for I have a few coaches who were very much building blocks to kind of what I became, even how my coaching style is. I think back then I had a couple female coaches. I think Coach Cindy was one of them. She coached us I think we were called Central Florida Eagles at the time. She was very passionate about the game in general, very passionate, very encouraging, but she knew how to talk to us young girls in general because she was a female athlete herself who played the game at a level. And so that role model and how her coaching style was, how she talked to us, engaged with us, and the way she broke down what we were learning and the whys we were learning, the idea that she never really had to yell at us because we understood that there was something wrong, but we just maybe needed to know why or how to fix it. I think even for me, when I got to college, I think Coacha at Florida State was huge in opening my eyes on just the analytics of the game, I think how we break down the most complexity. So you think about like pitching is it's a very complex movement, and to how well can we simplify it and break it down to teach somebody who's 8 years old, who's 7 years old, she might not know high terminology, but can we break it down for her to grasp that concept? And so Coach really tasked me with that, of not only the finer details of the game, how analytical can we be, but then how can we also simplify it? The idea of details versus big picture. And I think both those two female coaches for me were huge in my development and understanding the game, how I talk to athletes, how I engage with them, encourage them, be their cheerleaders. A lot of girls want just somebody in their corner cheering for them.
100%. I think that's probably one of the most important components, right, of having a coach and being a player, is that you have that support. You feel like it's safe to take risks. It's safe to make mistakes and to grow from them because you know that that person is going to be there for you to help you build that back up and improve and get better. So I absolutely agree with that. Let's talk about your time at Florida State. What was that like playing at such a powerhouse, great school?
It was intense, I will admit. It was intense. Yeah. It is, you think like you prepare for it in high school, like, okay, I know it's going to be, intense with the training, intense with what's the expectations for it. But then you get there and you're like, whoa, this is a game changer. So they like push your body and your mind to maximize your capabilities, I will say. I think, just like I said with Coacha, she challenged me here to what the aspect of pitching was, just even in the fine details of pitching, not just the basics of like, okay, balls and strikes, what's your count, but more of, okay, how are we shifting the defense to what this pitcher throws.
Right.
How are we going to attack each batter? Because stereotypically, the batter number 1 compared to batter number 4, your 4th hole compared to your 2nd hole, your 9th hole compared to your 6th hole, like those type of things, those finer details is what was challenged out of us, not only physically, but then camaraderie wise.
Mm-hmm.
About the teamwork. I've done plenty of team bondings in travel ball and in high school, but the amount of push for camaraderie in like Division I sports, because that's like you got to build that ride or die. Now it's like, okay,
Absolutely.
we're going to war together. We want to build that. Every year it's the same thing because you get incoming freshmen and you have your seniors that step away. So now every year it's like, okay, we're trying to reconnect and build something that we are tight knit, and we're going to go to battle together to grow this game and push our program to get to those championship games, to get to that World Series and get to that big championship game that we need to be to. So I will say it's intense, but like grateful for it, just grateful for it. It tests your perseverance, building building comfortable with the uncomfortable that it comes with it, the networking that you have, the sisterhood that you create, the true sisterhood that you create with players and a whole team of athletes that you have. It was a experience that I definitely take on not only how I teach individuals, but how a group team should be, how teammates should be.
I think going in as a freshman too, learning the dynamic of people that are already there, that are established, and realizing that you are not quite as good as you thought you were. Going from, being at the top of your game as a senior in high school and then being knocked down a few pegs. Quite a few pegs initially, just with the intensity of play that college athletes have. I've tried to explain it to a couple people before, and I've had other coaches on the podcast, and we all come to the same conclusion. We can't explain it until you're in it, really. To know what it feels like, to think you're at this level, and then you realize, ooh, there's so many more levels I have to get to. And that can be hard as a freshman going in. Was there a moment that sticks out to you where you were like, oh, wow, like
I would say probably like our first team lift. So I came in a little bit early because there was like a summer bridge program for the freshmen. So I came in early for that. But I think when fall semester started and we had our first team like training session, the separation I saw from the seniors, just the perseverance and the drive was on a whole nother level. I was like, wow, the intensity they put out and project and expect, right? So they pushed us to be better as well. And I was like, wow, this is huge opportunity and huge eye-opening to think like the level that they're at. You almost, how do I say, like you put them on a pedestal. It's like, wow, they are above. Like they were already here playing on TV and making these great hits and making these great plays. That's like, whoa, now I'm in the same room with them. Now I'm on the same team as them. And we're working out together. We're training together. We're on the field together. And that builds that like, okay, this is time for me to step up to the plate as well. And you think about like putting it in perspective when you are even throughout your youth and throughout high school, like there's always a point in life where you're starting from the bottom, I guess you could say. That you think about like, okay, if I'm transitioning from like 10U kid pitch to 12U, right? Now it's like, okay, I got 5 feet difference from the mound. Now these girls are throwing all types of pitches, right? These girls are starting to be athletes. And then you jump from, okay, 12U to high school ball. Well, that's a big difference again. Now I'm like back down, like, okay, now the mountains push back even more. These girls are throwing harder. These athletes are moving quicker. Some of these girls are hitting bombs. So now like each time, just like you're a freshman in high school and you see your seniors, it's like a freshman in college and you see those seniors. So there's consistent like, okay, not so much a setback, but a reorganization of like, okay, wow, these athletes got it at that point. Now it's to tempt myself to get better to be in that position as well. The maturity of a level as I keep growing and growing as an athlete alone.
So how important do you think it is then for athletes making those transitions, whether it's 8th grade going into high school or freshmen going into or seniors going into their freshman year of college, how important do you think it is for them to find a mentor that's an upperclassman and go through that goal setting process?
I think it is very important. You think how the seniors or juniors, they will always have a freshman they kind of guide, whether
Mhm.
it's the freshman that's in their same position as them, or it's just something they connect better with. They might see themselves in that athlete when they were that age or when they were that grade. I know for me coming in, I latched on to one of our pitchers at the time, and it's like, okay, I see we have a lot more in common and how we process things, how our pitching styles were. So we wanted to collaborate and be able to talk through. And she guided me on how that transition was, not only with just classes and academics, but the sport itself, that higher level of pitching, the IQ of it, how to communicate to my athletes behind me, my teammates behind me. So I think even for me in that role where I end up now mentoring somebody younger, it's like, okay, I see myself in you. I see, the wide-eyed looking around like, okay, this is what I need to guide. I can now help you like, okay, I've been in that position before. Let
Mhm.
me guide you to the mistakes I've went through, and maybe you can learn from my mistakes and I can put you on the right path. Because we're all looking out for each other, and you always want to think about you leave the program better than where you found it. And it's important to grow the generations that come up after you, the values that come every year. There's always the reset of those values like, hey, this is what this program is, and this is what the game is. And we want to keep growing generation by generation. I'm not just thinking about what my years are, but I'm also going to think about when I leave, how are you going to be able to get in and step up into the role, whether a captain role or a leadership role? But then also, can you leave that same legacy every year passed down, and it grows the game and the sport and the program together?
I think you just pointed out exactly what I've kind of hinted to in your introduction, that your love of the game is greater than your love of how you play the game. And I think that is something that is your legacy. I think that's something that's so powerful because a lot of times younger athletes are focused on the me and the rewards and the accolades and all the things that come with their personal success and team success. But there's a lot of me in our society today. And I think that focusing on why you play the game and how much you love that game and that sport should be the bigger joy that's something we're aiming to see down the road, right? Like you want to see the players that come to your college next or the players that go through the program you went through leave it better than they found it. You want to see them carry on your tradition and your work ethic. And so I have a lot of respect in your response because it's so powerful to know that you love the game more than you love just your time playing it. I think that actually, lends itself to why you're such a great coach is because of that. What inspired you to step into that coaching role after you finished playing in college? While you're playing in the Puerto Rican League and you're playing like all the things you're doing, what makes you want to continue coaching?
Well, I think for me, so I actually started giving out lessons when I was 16. So because it was more of, I had a couple parents reach out to me, like that were like beginners who like their daughters were very, very new, very young. And they're like, can you teach her the basics? Can you just teach her how to pitch? And I was like, well, I've done this for some years. At the time when I was 16, I was like, I could teach a beginner. That's fine. So then I just started doing that and I kept going for a little bit. And then when I got to Florida State, we would run camps, whether they were prospect camps or just youth camps in general. I would work those camps and I started kind of seeing a little connection of how much I actually enjoy
Yes.
coaching, right? Influencing what I've been taught
Mhm.
into athletes and putting it in different ways for them to understand, whether they learn visually, auditorily, or kinetically, those type of things. Like, can I teach them how to pitch, what to pitch, and then the IQ of the game? And I think it really kicked off. I definitely say post college, because I would give lessons here and there, but it
Mhm.
wasn't until post college that I was in that situation where, okay, I didn't jump into the pro softball with Puerto Rico just yet. I think there was like a year where I ended up having to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do? I
Right.
think it was definitely like, what do I want to do? Because as much as I graduated and got a degree, it was more of like very vague. And I'm like, I'm not sure I don't know what I really want to do. So
Right.
I ended up getting back into lessons just to start earning some income. And I said, okay, I like this. I like this. I'm growing as a coach and kind of the ways I was teaching. And I think then started having parents ask me about hitting. And I was like, okay, because pitching was my specialty. So I mostly
Right.
just gave out pitching lessons. Then I had parents ask about hitting. And I was like, well, I could teach beginning. Like, especially
Right.
if she's 8, 9 years old, never picked up a bat before, I can definitely get you started. Then it started growing where it's like, okay, can you teach her how to throw overhand? Can you teach her how to field a ball? And I was like, oh, okay. And given my background, I started having a couple coaches from little leagues, like my local little leagues reach out. Hey, can you come into a practice? Can you come to a practice and help us with a practice? Because sometimes a lot of these little leagues, it's dads who kind of step up to
Right.
feel like, okay, I'll help the team out. And he might have a background in baseball, but there's certain things in softball that's a little bit different,
Mhm.
right? So after I kept kind of getting in that world of it, the demand was so there. And I found myself not being so drained from working, but actually encouraged and motivated. I felt
Yes.
very motivated. The idea of when you find something you're passionate about doesn't feel like work anymore.
Mhm.
I think that
100%.
that is definitely, yeah, definitely where I found in softball and in coaching. I was like, wow, I worked 9 hours in the sun, but I feel
Right.
fulfilled. I feel fulfilled. And I think I just kept going with it to see the happiness of a kid who can see her performance
Mhm.
excel. I mean, that was priceless. That was priceless to me. Because I know for me as a kid, being able to get something, because you got to think about softball and baseball, but softball, it's a hard sport.
Right.
The coordination to hit a ball, to pitch a ball, to throw a ball, it is such a complex sport. And, it can be discouraging as, when you're a young athlete and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't touch this ball. I keep swinging and missing, or I can't pitch
Mhm.
a strike, or I keep throwing it in the ground. I'm throwing it in the sky. So to see the guidance I can build for them, and they're like, wow, I just hit that ball, or wow, I just pitched that strike. Oh my goodness, I was able to throw this ball from shortstop all the way to first base in
Yeah.
the air. So the happiness they see, it's motivating for them too, because I want them to have, the success in it to see like, okay, it's actually possible. The sport isn't as hard as you think, right? You're capable of doing it. And I think that fulfillment for me was seeing the happinesses on their faces and seeing the enjoyment they found when they were starting to be successful, or
Yeah.
even the teammates they met, or like, especially I've had girls who are like, yeah, this is gonna be my first year of little league and fall ball. And, I've never done something like this before. I'm like, that's okay.
It's
You know,
exciting.
it's
Yeah.
exciting. And then they come back after like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of practices and they're like, yeah, so I have Samantha and Kinsley and we're best friends. And so like now they build friendships
Yeah.
and it's like, oh yeah. And Kinsley goes to my school and she's in the other class and I didn't know. And so now they're best friends. So the idea to see that growth in them is just priceless to me, just priceless to see. And the same reason with my older athletes who are like, oh my gosh, I just had my first college coach reach out to me. I never thought it was possible. Like now they see like, okay, I have the ability to do this. And sometimes for me, it's just having somebody for them. They just need somebody to cheer them on in their corner. I'm like, hey, if you want this, if you want to just play the sport or you want to go to college for it, I'm going to help you. And I don't want you to get discouraged because you think you can't do it. More of you can do it. You just maybe need some guidance to it or the right connections or the right tools to access that opportunity.
Mhm. It's interesting to me because as an educator, I coached for a long time. And then I stepped away from coaching when I had my children. But seeing kids that play sports and the confidence that they have when they make mistakes or they mess up something or things don't go their way, the confidence that they have in knowing that they can overcome that is so much stronger than kids that don't play sports and aren't involved in a team activity or something that like a sport where they almost don't know how to handle that because they don't They don't know what it's like to do hard things, and it's okay that it's hard. It's okay that it's hard and it's not working for you right now. Keep going, whereas athletes, when they're younger and they go through that process, they're like, oh, I can do hard things. It took me a few weeks, but I figured it out. And that coach really believed in me. And my parents actually kept coming to the game, like it just gives them that ability to work through things. And it is so rewarding from, the parent side, the coaching side, and even as an educator in the classroom, seeing kids have that resilience and that confidence to work through. And one of the things that I wish all high school kids did, or college age, is to volunteer time to help coach or do like you did and do the private lessons, just because I think that it helps you, because it is hard. And it gets hard sometimes as a college athlete and even as a high school athlete with the pressures. Like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You start, have doubts about your ability and your love of the game. But when you go back and you work with the younger kids, you remember why you're there. It does help you fall in love with the game again in a different way. And so I think that, younger athletes that are listening right now, if you're a high school athlete or a college athlete, volunteer some of your time, work those summer camps, help out with your little brother or sister's team, and remember why you fell in love with it and look at where you started from. Yes. So I love that, your personal joy too comes from seeing the success and the joy and the growth in your athletes. What do you think separates athletes who improve from those who kind of stay stagnant as they get a little bit older?
I think a lot of times it is the motivation of it. There gets to a certain point. I was mentioning this to a few parents that they might be on certain teams, and there gets to a point where you start seeing the separation of athletes who are growing in the game and the athletes who kind of go a little bit on that stagnation. And a lot of it has to do with the motivation of it. And then you have to think about, what is your clear goal with the sport? Not to say one clear goal is better than the other, but we think about the athletes that tend to excel are working towards being the best or working towards the goal to be on a college team, to get to the AUSL, those type of things. So the development of that is that they're pursuing and the hard work they put in. A lot of times I've seen it in high school, me when I was in high school, and then I've seen it in high school players, that softball is more of a enjoyment. It's just something that I wanted to do to keep myself busy and the friends I make. That's nothing wrong with that either.
Right.
So we have to be realistic with ourselves, that us as parents, us as coaches, the athlete themselves, hey, are we wanting to be great? Are we wanting to be the best of our physical ability? Or are we doing this for the enjoyment of the game? Do we just want to have friendships, the culture of it, being able, like high school ball, being able to stay out Friday night? Oh, okay, we're going to go to Long Doggers after the game. Let's have some fun. Oh, well, I practice, then we do a team bonding. That's nothing wrong. I've had athletes who kind of well, I don't want to pursue college. Okay, that's fine. But I want to get ready for high school season. Okay, let's train for high school season. But you still have to work. And sometimes the girls will hit a lull because the motivation to go out and rep, pitching, go swing off the tee starts declining.
Right.
And that's just something an athlete has to understand herself. And we do have a conversation, a hard conversation, a realistic conversation of, hey, I know you don't want to pursue this at a collegiate level. However, if you want to be a starter on your varsity team, or you want to move up from JV to varsity, you do have to work, because there are athletes who are going to work more than you, and it will show on the field and the stats they perform. That is the reality of it, right? The game you cannot let the game just work it towards you, right? The idea of talent, working hard beats talent. So that's the same idea. You can be talented and you can just want to play the sport until high school and that's it. But if you want to be a starter, if you want to get on varsity, those type of things, you do have to work. You still have to work. And that's just the reality of it. And I tell my parents, I said, if you find your daughter in a certain situation where now she has a crossroads of, where am I going to go in my path? I might be on a team that's kind of accepted the reality of just playing to play. We want to develop, but we're just here to play. And then the other team where it's like, no, we're here to win. We're here to be on showcases and get in front of college coaches and talk to college coaches. That's that separation. So then the path of that starts separating. And that's more of the athlete itself has to have a reflection in within, and then a conversation with their parents and with the coach, whether they're travel ball coach, their mentor, their private coach, like a pitching coach, hitting coach, fielding coach. So that's where the separation tends to happen of the gap grows if athletes who just play to enjoy it, and the athletes who want to pursue something beyond, whether it's collegiate, professionally, or to be the best of the best.
I think that's great that you pointed that out, because I don't know. I think there needs to be more of that real conversation that parents and athletes are having, and it needs to be involved with the coach. I do think that has to be the three pillars in place for success, but it needs to be real. Like, let's be honest. And then that self-reflection piece, I talk about this all the time with my Span Athletics business partner, Stacy, because it is so important. And she is in the nutrition and sports dietitian world, but also that self-reflection has to be there because, well, you're saying you want these goals, but what did you eat today? Right? It's just being very honest about the situations. And I think that athletes need to really, I would say by sophomore year, really be locked in on what is my path that I want. And is everybody my path? Do we all have the same idea of where I'm going? I know we are running out of time. So I do want to ask you, what is next for you on this journey?
Let's see. Well, I don't want to give out any secrets, but
no. Well, I mean, we do want to know, but
I mean, I will say kind of now moving into my off season, I'm definitely planning to grow some potential personal business when it comes to softball. I think my upcoming goal in this fall is to start breaking down the game itself. I've started to notice, like, when it comes to content out there, there's a lot of content on drills, on different types of drills, specialty drills, those type of things. But I've noticed there's not a lot on absolute starting from scratch content. So I'm starting to see it with parents who come to me and they just don't know the game. They might not have any background in softball, but their daughter wants to play, or their daughter's starting to have real interest in it. And so from how do we even play the game? What's the rules of the game? What do I even get? What's the gear do I get? Can I not break the bank trying to get gear that's so expensive?
Yeah, $500 bat.
Yes, right? I'm like, you don't need the $500 bat. So those type of things, like being able to build some connections. I think I'm planning to do some kind of group clinic based things that not only are for coaches, for parents, just to go over what is needed in the beginning and what's the process between travel ball and then rec ball with, your little league and your Babe Ruths. And then also, like, what's the process of collegiate? What's the recruitment age? I have a lot of freshmen or incoming freshmen that come, and I just ask them, I'm like, hey, you think about college? Oh yeah, I want to play. Okay. Did you like start anything? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, so you haven't had a conversation about that. And I asked them, I said, has your travel ball team had a conversation? No. Okay. So and they might not know. And then the parents, the same thing. I know my dad had no idea how to do any of that recruitment process, what to even do, how to even get in contact.
Same.
So
my parents were so out of it. I went through my athletic director, actually. Like, that's who helped me.
Yeah. So like, I think there's not a lot of information out there that's accessible through media to kind of have like the tips and tricks of like, what is it? How do we, like, what's the process of it? And then the rules that come in from a beginning stage, when should I transition my daughter into travel ball, all those things. So I think I'm wanting to kind of grow that a little bit and kind of create a baseline so that not only is the growth in there, but so that parents and the player can actually continue in the game, the interest in softball. I don't want them to be discouraged because they had a coach who was not transparent with them, or they were just lost. They didn't know this was how it's supposed to be. And the daughter gets discouraged because she's in a place that she shouldn't be, whether in travel ball and probably should stay in rec ball, or vice versa. She maybe is in rec ball and is finding it boring. There's there are cases of that. So growing in that, I think, and then moving into kind of the spring, we're looking at to potential overseas activity as well for myself. So we'll see what's in the works for that. But in preparation for next summer, I would love to see myself more in the PSL
Mhm.
and the growth of that as well. Like, because I think they're starting to bring out like 3 new teams for next summer already. So it's going to
Yeah.
be a big summer for next year.
I'm so excited. I'm very excited to keep up with your journey through PSL, also with the new venture. So, where can our listeners follow you and keep up with all you've got going on? Because I know there's going to be a lot of softball players and families that are going to want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I think for Instagram and Facebook, it's B Cruz 319 or 315. Facebook is just my name, Bianca Cruz. I think I'm on TikTok. I know I'm not as active, but I know the kiddos are. So
We
B
are.
Cruz 33. Yeah, right. So I'm trying to get better at it, but TikTok is definitely a little bit under my age. But definitely on TikTok. I know, like, for my older girls, I am on X account because that's a lot more of the recruitment stuff now that college coaches are on those X accounts. But you're more than welcome to reach out that way. But yeah, that's definitely like social media platforms. Definitely the Facebook is a lot more engagement for my parents,
Yeah.
especially information regarding the game and any youth stuff, youth tournaments, youth activities, all American games, all that stuff is going to be on that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time today out of your chaotic schedule to join us on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Stay tuned for more real world tips and conversations with coaches, athletic directors, current and former collegiate and professional athletes, sports dietitians, sports psychologists, and other performance experts.
If this episode gave you something to chew on, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe. Nutrition is important, but let's be honest, we've all got to eat. So help us feed this podcast so we can keep fueling you.
Don't forget to join the Span Athletics community to get more exclusive content by following us on all of our social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X at @span_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.